everyone, Bren here. Welcome back to my channel, Gigi the Garden Girl. This week's video is going to be celebrating all of the cut flowers which are growing here in my cottage garden. It is mid-spring 2022 here in New South Wales, Australia, and there is just so much beautiful colour in the flowers that I thought we could go and harvest a big bunch of them and make a very pretty garden posy. As we harvest them, I will share with you a few tips as well as some interesting facts about some of these cut flowers. So please just sit back, relax for a few minutes and let's get into it now. There are so many pretty cut flowers blooming in the garden this week. I thought we could start off by picking a few of them to make a little garden posy. I'm not going to go with any colour theme with this arrangement. I'm just going to pick what looks good and pop it into the posy. Starting off with this bunch of Icelandic poppies. I've shown you these for the last 2 weeks in my garden updates, but I really can't get enough of them at the moment, and I know they won't be flowering for that much longer, so I'm trying to make the most of them. And I'll definitely be using all of these in the garden posy. Next up is this gorgeous baby pink Snapdragon. This variety is called Tetra, and it's quite easy to source these seeds here from most of the online Australian seed companies. They often sell them in mixed coloured seed packs, so it really is a nice surprise when they begin to bloom. You're not quite sure what colours you are going to be growing. I do have another patch of Snapdragons growing over in one of those long cut flower beds where there are 3 more varieties. There's Potomac, Chantilly and Madame Butterfly. I'm just going to head down and show you that patch now. With the Potomac Snapdragon variety, they actually are supposed to be able to tolerate a bit more of the hot summer weather as opposed to other Snapdragon varieties, or a lot of them, which prefer the cooler temps. So I am thinking hopefully these Potomacs that I put in will flower during our summertime, and that will help just to extend the season of these very pretty long spiked cut flowers. Here they are, this big section. There's roughly around 32 plants. Now we are back to this one which we just harvested. You can see on this one that I cut the stem quite deep because I really want it to be nice and long, but it did mean that I am sacrificing some of the side shoots. But not to worry, because when I did plant these into this garden bed, I pinched out the tips of all of the seedlings. With most of the Snapdragons that I have growing here, I pinch them, which is a very simple process. Back when they are seedlings, you can use your finger and thumb just to pinch or remove the top growing tip. You can also use the secateurs as well, and I like to do that when the plant has roughly maybe 5 or 6 set of leaves, usually a couple of inches tall. And it just really helps to encourage the plants to bush out, producing more side shoots, which will give you more stems. You don't have to pinch your Snapdragons, you can just leave them as is, and usually with most of them what will happen is they will develop one singular tall strong stem, and on top of that will be a really large display of Snapdragon flowers. And this, I believe, is what a lot of flower farmers do. They leave their seedlings, don't do anything to them, because the florists prefer the really long stems. They're just a bit easier for them to work with, and they do, I guess, produce a nicer display on top of blooms. However, I mean, I'm pinching mine. Yes, the stems may be a little bit shorter, the floral display may be a little bit less, but I feel like for the area that I have available to grow, I want to make the most of it, and I don't really want to be using a large space like that one I just showed you just to be picking, you know, whatever it was, 32 stems, and then that's it. I want to get more stems out of it, so I'm fine with the stems being a little bit shorter. you know, it means I just get more production out of that patch. It's quite easy to remove all of this foliage quickly. All you do is you get your hand and hold the stem firm and pull down like this, and it's pretty much all off. Just a few little scraggly bits left. Oh, look what I did. I knocked that one off by accident into the little bucket it goes with the poppies. Just beside the Snapdragon patch are a bunch of these beautiful foxgloves which are beginning to flower. Their bell-shaped blooms really are like a little runway down there to the pollen for the bees. And I absolutely love growing these every year because they do remind me of Ireland so much. Rather than cutting off this main stem, which frankly is a bit too big for this little garden posy I plan on making, what I will do instead is cut off a few of these little side shoots. When I'm cutting stems to put into garden posies or flower arrangements, I like to try and go really deep down here to make the snip, and I also snip it at a bit of an angle. See how I kind of tilt the secateurs? You can see there, that's the first cut I'm going to give it, and by cutting it at an angle like that, you give the stem more of a larger surface area to be able to absorb some of the water in my little bucket vase, which actually is a measuring jug. Look at it. Oh, what am I doing using it? Now the other thing to remember with foxgloves is that they are quite a poisonous plant. You don't want to consume any part of this, and you always need to be careful when you are handling it. You know, wash your hands after so that you don't get any residue or whatever it is on this plant that can make you sick. Really, when I'm stripping the foliage off like this for any of these cut flowers, I should be wearing gloves. You can see here on this stem that there are quite a number of flowers which have yet to open. They're still at the bud stage, but not to worry about that because they will open once they are in the vase, as long as you have a few that have already bloomed. Roughly maybe a third, the others will follow very shortly. Foxgloves are a biannual, so where I live you sow the seeds in autumn and they flower in spring, and depending on what type of summer you have, if it's not too hot, oh this wind today, if it's not too hot, I could potentially leave some of these plants in the ground after I've cut back all the spent flowers, and they will continue to survive until next spring, because we have fairly mild winters here, and then next spring they will flower again, but there will be a lot more flowers, a lot larger stems. So I don't know if I'm going to do that, I'll see, but we are kind of due a more cooler summer, especially with the La Nina weather event, the rain, cooler temps. So it might be worth giving up a bit of that garden space just to see if they grow next year for me. I'm over beside the patch of these blue Dutch irises which are coming to an end now. However, there are a couple that I think I can pick that are still looking in reasonable condition. Before I share this next little tip, I would like to apologise in advance to all of you who tune in every week, because you've already heard me say this. But the reason why I'm repeating myself is because I really want to have all this information in just one video, so that if you know you want to go and refer back to it, or if anyone is new here, I'm able to let them know about the best time to harvest these Dutch irises. Oh, got some hair in my mouth again. Okay, done. Now this little arrangement I'm going to make is for my kitchen table. So I don't mind that this flower has already opened, and if the bloom kind of fades quickly, I can always pop out to the garden and pick a fresh one. But if you are cutting these Dutch irises and you want a really long vase life, you can actually pick them when they are still at the bud stage, just beginning to open. and in a few days they will be flowering like this one in your vase. These are actually growing beside one of our apple trees and it's beginning to flower. Oh, the smell is gorgeous. There's so many bees here every day pollinating these little blooms. Hopefully it will be packed with apples this year. I could also cut off a few of these stems to use in the garden posy, but I don't think I will today. I'd rather just leave them here for the moment and just let them develop some apples, but potentially I could cut off some stems from the top because I think there's really a bit too much growing up there. At last, finally, the Ranunculus are starting to flower. I've only picked two. I really don't want to go crazy and cut off all the blooms that are starting there. I think two is plenty for today. The best time to harvest ranunculus flowers is when they are at what is called the marshmallow stage. I'm still learning this technique myself, but pretty much the marshmallow test is where you get yourself a ranunculus bud like this one and give it a little squeeze. If it feels like you are squeezing a marshmallow, a little bit squishy, then it is ready to harvest. This one feels like it's still a bit too firm. There's another one over here. Let's give this one a little squeeze. That one to me feels like it's too loose, so I probably missed the best time to harvest this one. But maybe next week I will be able to find the ideal bud to show you. I feel like I've completely neglected these anemones because I haven't been harvesting the flowers and I haven't been deadheading them, and they're looking pretty sad, but you know, there's still more flowers on the way. So what I might actually do now is just do a bit of deadheading and then I'll pick off any of the ones that are looking pretty decent. Okay, that job is done and I managed to get these 4 stems. I'm now over by the long rows of cut flowers to pick a few of these blue anemones, and the same kind of thing is happening here. You can see there's quite a lot that are looking damaged. They've got a lot of petal damage from the rain, looking quite miserable. I think I need to just chop them back and try and encourage some fresh blooms. Anemones are a really good example of a plant which displays, wait for it, N.S.W. I'll put the name up on the screen. It's a condition in plants where the plant is sensitive to the amount of light and the temperature. So you may notice sometimes when I show you the anemones, the blooms are fully open, while other times they are closed up, like those ones I just showed you. So they open up when the sun is out, when it's warm during the day, but once it comes to the evening or if it's cloudy and the temperatures drop, they close up. Some people believe that these flowers are loved by the fairies, and that is because the fairies come in the evening and sit in the center of these blooms, and then they begin to close up, and the petals closing up helps to create a little cocoon for the fairies, protecting them during the night so that they can have a safe little sleep. I managed to get 4 flower stems. Hopefully though, after I've given both those patches a good cut back, I'll get a lot more anemone flowers next week. We'll see. You know, the stems are quite short on them. However, the more you pick these anemones, if it's the right period in their growth, they will put out longer stems. Well, let's hope they do. What you are looking at is the seed pods from the green Mizuna, which I had grown over here in this bed. And remember I showed you all these lovely little dainty yellow flowers that the hoverflies were enjoying? Well, they're pretty much finished now and the seed pods have developed, and I'm thinking this would add a really nice bit of green texture to the posy. Just been stopped in my tracks. I picked this much so far, and then when I was about to harvest this stem I found something quite interesting on it. Do you see all those grey little insects? They are a big bunch of aphids. I just found this other stem with more aphids on it. So Mizuna is actually in the Brassica genus. It's related to, you know, your cabbages, cauliflowers, kales and cabbage. And I believe by the appearance of these aphids, they're quite grey. They look to me to be cabbage aphids, which would make sense if they are on this plant. How close can I bring this to my face? I don't think I want it too close. I just wanted to say that it doesn't really bother me that I've got aphids on this Mizuna plant, because it has finished producing, you know, leaves for me to harvest. It's just setting seed now, so it's not really a big deal, I don't think. And I'd much rather them be on this brassica plant than on one of my cauliflowers or I was going to say cabbage, but not cabbage, broccoli over in the raised beds. And you know what? This will be food for the ladybirds, especially the ladybird larvae. So I'm going to leave these aphids in the garden. There's only a few, as I said. I'm not too stressed out about it, and if it means I can get some ladybirds in here, I would be really happy with that, because as we all know, they are very beneficial. For some sweet scent in this posy, I'm going to pick a few of these stock flowers. For a big punch of bold colour, I'm going to pick a few of these calendula blooms. And for the wow factor, which I think every garden posy should have, I will add one of these Pride of Mandaria flowers. If you think this one that I picked is quite large, it is nothing compared to some of the others. They are enormous. I think it was one of you who said last year that they remind you a bit of a flower that you might find in a Dr. Seuss book. I'm telling you, I think you could be onto something there. This particular flowering plant, which is a perennial, has been growing in this bed for a number of years now, and this year it has put out the most stems I've ever seen. They are called Astromeria or Peruvian lilies, and each stem has a cluster of flowers. There are many different varieties out there. This one here has cream, pink and yellow blooms. You harvest the stems when the buds are just beginning to open, like say this one here would be a good example of when I would pick one. Well, when I should pick one, it's not when I do pick one, because I don't really care. I just pick them when they're open, as I said before. And the really cool thing about these is they have a very interesting way of harvesting. So you know how you harvest rhubarb, for example? You go deep down the stem and you wiggle it around and pull it out. You don't use any secateurs or a knife or anything. Well, the same thing goes for these Peruvian lilies. Here's a bit of a demonstration. Now, I don't have gloves on, so I'm not going to go all the way down there to grab the stem, but that's what you really should do. You go down as far as you can and you give it a pull, because if you pull it up too high, what could happen is you could snap the stem. So let's hope that doesn't happen here. So I give it a wiggle and pull, and look at this. Look how long the stems are. What would you say, 1.5 meters? So cool. This one isn't even the longest that I've picked. I can't even show you on camera. I have some in my bathroom and they are taller or longer. Is it taller or longer than I am? Here they are. I picked them a few days ago. The foliage is starting to look a bit sad. I had left them here to show you, but usually what I would do is cut back the stems a lot more and remove, what I've been showing you, and remove all the bottom foliage. But because I've done this, I think it has created a little bit of an issue with the direction that the blooms are facing. Ideally, I should have these sitting upright in a bucket of fresh water, but they're leaning up against the tiles, which has caused the flowers to tilt this way, so they're not ideal looking. but they will be grand for what we are doing today. I'm just going to grab 3 of these stems. That's plenty. I'm now back outside. I have conditioned these flowers, removed the foliage, cut the stems so they are a bit of a better length to work with. And then here are the rest of these flowers. I really should have grabbed a big bucket. That's way too small. It actually tipped over and I had to refill it with water. You might notice here that I do have some of these little dainty clusters of white flowers. They are from the, do you remember I planted the watermelon radishes that didn't actually develop properly and they went to flower or bolted before the plant was able to develop a proper size radish at the base? Anyway, I might use a few of these. And then I did notice, well, kind of while I was picking them, you can't even see them. You have to go all the way down here. These stock stems are very short, so I'm not sure if they will work in the arrangement, but if not, I can just put them in a separate little jam jar and have them as, like, you know, a second little posy. Well, here's the final results. I didn't use every single stem that I had available because some of them were a bit too short, and I did find also with the Icelandic poppies that when I was handling them, a few petals fell off, a few of them, so I don't have too many of them in this bunch, but I'm still pleased. It's nice and colourful, joyful, a really pretty spring garden posy. These Mizuna seed pods look good. They've turned out well. I did actually bring a couple of stems into the kitchen about a week ago just to see how they hold up in a vase, and so far so good. I was thinking, oh, they might end up smelling, or, you know, they might brown off, but the stems that I have in there look just as good as when I picked them. Might leave them in there for another maybe few days and see if there's any changes, because I really want them to be able to look like this for at least a week in arrangements. With flowers, it's recommended that you change the water every few days just to make sure it's nice and fresh. You can also, when you are, well, I actually did it but I didn't show you, you can cut the stems again, give them a fresh cut before you pop them into your vase. Well, look who has come over to say hello. Oh, she's gone off now. Bye, Snowflake. The other thing when it comes to extending the vase life is just to make sure that you don't have any foliage sitting in the water. So that's the reason why I removed any leaves from the stems that are below the water line. Like, there is some left up here, but that's fine. If you had leaves sitting in there, it would cause the water to go a bit mushy. No, mushy's not the right word, slimy, introducing bacteria which will be drawn up to the stems into these flowers, and it will really affect their vase life, shortening it greatly. Well, that is it for this week, everyone. I'm just thinking, I have a whole bunch of dahlias that I have sprouting in pots that really need to go into the ground. I still haven't sorted that area out near the raised bed, so I have to get that prepared this weekend. That needs to be something top of my list. I hope you all have a great weekend and a wonderful week ahead too. I will see you again next Friday. Hopefully it won't be as windy, but you never know with this weather. Okay, take care. See you soon.